In just a few minutes, when this day is over, our kids are going to start to come in with their lights, symbolizing our future. And we are going to march this year, and only this year, with the Torahs from our sanctuary to our new temporary synagogue and sanctuary in our ballroom. Al Tirah Israel, al Tirah, ki gur aryeh alo ata, ukshe aryeh imshag mi lo hiram. One of my most beloved memories is from Saturday afternoons in Buenos Aires, when the youth activities at my synagogue concluded. Our beloved Rabbi Baruch Plavnik, would join us to lead the Abdallah service. It was the twilight hour, a time like today at this hour, and we stepped outside to gaze at the stars, united in song. And among his favorite was the melody I just sang. He wasn't a cantor, but he sang with his souls. Years later, I discovered why this melody, why this song he used to sing at that moment of the Abdallah. A song that talks about not to be afraid. In the Sephardic liturgy, as Shabbat draws to a close, we sing Al Tirah Abdi Yaakov, do not fear my servant Jacob. As darkness falls and the unknown looms, we need that reassuring voice telling us, Al Tirah, don't be afraid, I'm here. For me, that voice was embodied by my rabbi, the one who repeatedly said to me, do not be afraid, Al Tirah. Every new beginning, each new year, stirs in most of us two emotions, excitement and fear. The excitement arises from the prospect of new and better opportunities, but is shadowed by the fear that things may not unfold as expected. This night, this moment of Neliah, I would like to talk about our fears. As this moment when the doors of forgiveness start to close, I would like to talk about our fears. What wisdom does Judaism offer for confronting our fears? Just as we have a toolbox to repair something in our homes, we as Jews possess a remarkable toolbox to mend ourselves. The Torah, the Talmud, the Midrash are our own Jewish history. Fear, the Talmud says, is one of the three factors that weaken our bodies. It often impedes our progress, it oppresses us, and it silences our own voices. It's these fears that I would like to address. Let's start with a fundamental truth that sometimes is overlooked. Fear is natural, but how we respond to fear is cultural or religious in this sense. Is it not coincidental that psychoanalysis, founded by a Jew with its early practitioners being Jewish, resonates with Jewish culture? Sigmund Freud, though revealed by the Nazis who labeled psychoanalysis Jewish science, essentially brought to light something very Jewish. According to our rabbinic tradition, strength and resilience do not primarily reside in our physicality, but in our souls and minds. We inherit a culture that doesn't equate strength with suppressing feelings, fears, and anxieties, but rather with discussing them, confessing them in our prayers, and making our fears subject of conversation with others. So this is my first suggestion. Let's talk about our fears. When asked how you are, if there's something that occasionally troubles or frightens you, and if the person inquired is worthy of your trust, do not respond by just saying everything is okay. Dare to admit that sometimes, everything is not okay. In the movie Encanto, they sing, we do not talk about Bruno. But in Judaism, we sing, we talk about our fears. But before talking about our fears and the Jewish toolbox to try to overcome our fears, I would like to suggest what are the origins of our fears. According to an Israeli thinker, Micha Goodman, he says that fear has two sources. The first one, awareness of the future. Unlike animals who largely live in a perpetual present, humans understand that tomorrow is likely to come after today. And the second point, the issue lies in our uncertainty about that future. First, we know that there's going to be a future, that today is not going to be forever, but the problem is that we do not know what tomorrow will bring. Today, I would like to concentrate in this type of fear. As humans, we try to tackle this fear by two ways: politics and religion. Politics representing our attempt to create structures that provide us with a semblance of security. But today, in a world that most of our political institutions are not bringing us a lot of trust and confidence, maybe we can find a little bit of hope in our own traditions. A first idea, acknowledging that some fear is beneficial. It says in the book of Proverbs, Ashrei Adam mefached tamid. Happy is the one who is always fearing. This is a very Jewish idea. Not other people in the entire world could have written this. Happy is the person who is always fearing. What is the type of fearing that the Proverbs is talking about? Is the fear that we may be wrong. A fear to overcome overconfidence. Is something destroys societies and destroy the Jewish people many times in history is overconfidence. At the times of Jeremiah, the Jewish people said the temple will stand forever, and it was destroyed by the Babylonians. In times of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Jewish people said, we are invincible. The Romans could not defeat us. We have God in our side. And Rabbi Yochanan said to them, Ashrei Adam mefached tamid. Happy is the person who fears. Not that fear that paralyzes you, but the fear that allows you to be conscious that you are not invincible. Happy is the man who is always anxious, never grow too complacent. A modicum of fear, insecurity, and a doubt is essential to recognize the transient nature of things and our continuous potential for improvement. Fear keeps us vigilant in our surroundings and prevents us from succumbing to the illusion of invincibility from our ivory towers. The second idea and the second importance of fear in the Jewish tradition is something that we do not like to talk too much. It's what we call Irat Shamayim, Irat Elohim, fearing God or fearing heaven. In many liberal synagogues, we do not talk about this Jewish term, but it's one of the most important ones grounding in our tradition. What does it mean to fear God? Is what the Rabbi Bradley Shabbat Artson said, holy fear or noble fear. Is the fear that we can speak our truth even if most people do not believe us or think the same in our surroundings. This Irat Elohim, this fearing of God and not human beings, was the fear that the two midwives had in Egypt. When Pharaoh said, drown all the baby boys, there were two midwives that they had Irat Elohim, they fear God, and they say, no, we are not going to do it. Many times we have fear about people that are above us in the society. And many people in history acted wrong because I fear them. They say I have to do this, even though that I thought it was immoral, I still do it. Irat Elohim is growing in ourselves the feeling that when something is wrong and we feel it, we have a God inside us. We have God above us telling us to hear his voice and not the voice of the one that wants us to cause harm in the world. Rabbi Artson concludes this idea by saying, fear of heaven is a step toward our soul liberation. A soul that trembles not to a human display of might, power, or influence, but at the sheer wonder of life and existence. This is the strength of faith that offers us true freedom. Third idea, bitachon. I grew up in Argentina, like some of you this evening. And in Argentina, when you hear the word bitachon, you think about security guards. After the bombing of the Embassy of Israel in 1992, after the bombing of AMIA, the Jewish Community Center, in 1994, all synagogues became guarded. And we had bitachon. I was a bitachon too. I was like Mike, but not so strong, at the entrance of my synagogue, because we thought that we need to protect. But in the Jewish tradition, bitachon, security, has a deeper meaning. Bitachon means to trust God even if we are not knowing where our life is heading. Bitachon means to trust God, to trust those who are around you, that everything will be fine. Let's rekindle our faith not only in God but in ourselves. Bitachon, this idea of security, should instill in us with trust, not just in the divine but in our own capabilities. Bitachon can fortify us when we are faced with uncertainties of an unpredictable future. Just as we sought refuge in our parents' embrace as children to feel secure, let's remember that we share a Heavenly Father who watches over us and safeguards us. That is bitachon. And the last idea about how to deal with fears is through memory, our collective memory and learning from history. We are a people with history and memory. Let us also use our history and collective memory to avoid falling prey to the fears that media often seeks to install. How many times have we heard that the end is near? How many times since 1960s have we been told that in 5 or 10 years we'll run out of forest, food, or water? How often have we seen experts proclaiming that the entire world will be unemployed due to a new technology? We must not ignore reality. We cannot cover the sun with our hands. Yes, there's problems in the world. Yes, democracies are at a crossroads. Yes, global warming exists. Yes to all of it. But let's learn from our history and our valuable memory. We have witnessed great empires rise and fall, yet we, as the Jewish people, endure. For the past 2,000 years, we have heard predictions of the end of the world, yet here we are, and the world still stands. Religions for millennia have garnered followers by prophesying Armageddons, messiahs, and catastrophic endings of the world. In our time, a lot of people try to install this same idea. Let us not ignore the world's problems, for they insist. However, the way to address them is not by generating panic or exacerbating our own fears, but uniting to confront them. We have done so for millennia, and we can continue to do so. Fear is a universal experience. At this time of Neliah, many times I feel fear. I ask myself if my prayers were received. I ask myself if I have become the better person I said I was going to be. The phrase most frequently echoed in the Torah is Tirah. The phrase that most appears in the entire Torah is Tirah. Don't be afraid. Abraham, our father, was afraid, and God told him, Tirah. Isaac was afraid, and God told him, Tirah, don't be afraid. Agar, when she was lost in the desert, uncertain of her and her son's survival, God told her, fear not. Through countless trials and tribulation, Moses, God's faithful servant, encountered moments of faith, fear. And each time God offered the same reassurance. Tirah ve'al techat. Fear not and be dismayed. Moses in turn passed on this message to his student Joshua. On the sacred time of Neliah, I extend the same message to you. Tirah, do not fear. Let us not suppress our fears, ignore them, or turn away from them. Instead, my invitation at the beginning of this year, let's talk about our fears. Let's recognize that the healthy dose of fear also shields us from external threats and from the peril of believing that we are invincible. Let's embrace a fear that is greater than the fear of humans, a fear our tradition calls Irat Elohim, a fear that gives us the confidence to be true to ourselves, to raise our voices against injustice, and to make a stand when societal norms clash with our moral compass. Let us learn from history, and let's use our collective memory to diminish the amount of panic. Above all, let us believe. May this be a year of faith. And believe, and let us take this leap of faith together, that we have an Avinu Malkeinu, a Father, a King who protects us, who is there for us, even when we cannot comprehend his mysterious ways. Let us trust that everything will find its place, that everything will be right. Tirah, don't fear. We have God, we have our memories, we have each other. We are a community. Tirah. Tirah Israel, Tirah. Ki gur aryeh lo ata, ukshe aryeh ishag, mi lo ira. Fear not, a cub of lion you are, and if the lion will roar, who will not fear? At this time, inviting us not to fear, but to confront our future with strength, with courage, and with faith. I will invite you for the last time to please rise.